and started with the pain points, right? If you know how AI, how blockchain, how all of these available tools work, you know that so far Africa has only been data mines for Western tech, right? And we want to see a world where we are creating tools that, even though they depend a little on the Western principle for the Western tech, there are also tools that are able to sound like the African man. There are tools that are able to um, solve the African man's problems. So we want to see Africans create AI tools, blockchain, implement blockchain, the Web3 ecosystem into building tools that can affect Kenya's uh, coffee farms, can affect Nigerians' education system, can fix corruption, can, it's a whole lot of things. We want to build resources, we want to build tools, we want to build data centers that are able to affect and solve Africa's systemic challenges. And that's basically what AIBI is for. And one of the initiatives that we decided to carry out this year is community hubs. We wanted to create um, communities that were niche for people. And so we are starting with the African Women in AI Community Hub. And it's been a long road. For those who know, it's been a long road coming here. We've just been around for a couple of months, and I'm so glad that today we are able to have our very first town hall. And we have to give a shout out to Deep Funding. Deep Funding is a blockchain ecosystem under Singularity Net. They're the ones who provided funding for this community hub. So thank you, Deep Funding, for the opportunity to be able to do this with all of Africa's women. And we are so grateful. Thank you so much. We know that the next, this project with you would be as impactful as it ought to be, even more than we've said it would be. So yeah, thank you, Deep Funding. Thank you so much. So guys, today I would be your host, and not not so much as I'll be saying a lot of the words or talking the most. We have three brilliant women here, and for those of us who listen to, there's this popular podcast, I said what I said podcast, I think. Yeah. So I'd seen a snippet once on Twitter. I don't listen to it so much anymore, but like I saw a snippet on Twitter once, and one of the co-hosts was like, one thing about Nigerian women is that they achieve. And so one thing about African women is that we achieve. We know how to do things. We know how to get things done. We're absolutely brilliant. We're absolutely creative. We're absolutely life givers. We are African women. There's just no other species like us. And so we have three African women from Nigeria. I know that I believe one of them is not currently based in the country, but we have three amazing African women who are going to be sharing some of their insights with us on different themes. And it was a pleasure speaking with them over the past few weeks, emails, calls, and I really am so grateful that they chose to do this with us today. I know that it's not the easiest to make our time to be here with people on a Saturday again, especially for people who work 9 to 5s or people who work 9 to 9 p.m.s. So yeah, I want to say thank you to our speakers. Thank you so much. So guys, now that we've said all the thank yous, thank you to you, our members who have joined us the past few weeks. For those of you who've shared the flyers, spread the word, told your friends, and told your friends' friends, and told your neighbors, and told your sisters. And, thank you everyone for doing this with us. This community hub will potentially change our lives. It would influence how we work, our output at work. It would influence how we carry out the legacy of excellence. It would potentially change every kind of career. I remember speaking to a few women about 2 weeks ago at the Women in DeFi conference. I remember saying to them that I remember someone had mentioned that, oh, she didn't know that AI was more than ChatGPT and generative AI, and then she was asking how AI can, how that, oh, she's not really into tech, so she is, but she's really curious about these things. I was saying that, oh, this is not for like tech babes alone. It's for every kind of woman out there, provided you work, provided you are African, provided you are a woman, and you really want to learn how to use these resources, these tools, this, new tech of sorts. And AI is something that can affect healthcare. How we deliver healthcare, how we deliver precision medicine is something that can affect farms, how we plant our crops, how we monitor our climates, how we predict, certain triumphs of the farmland and certain defeats of the farmland as well. It is something that can affect education, how we deliver education, how we are able to meet every kind of student in the classroom and even beyond the classroom. It's something that can affect content creation and marketing and, every kind of babe, really, every kind of babe can use AI beyond generative AI. So yeah, thank you everyone. It is my honor truly to welcome you all to our town hall today. So the thing is, here at the hub, what we'll be doing is every month there'll be a town hall and a sort of ask me anything session. So the town hall would have speakers like the speakers we have here today, and then the ask me anything session will have someone who just, you could ask anything that literally anything concerning, set topics and certain concepts and the rest of it. So this month we're having town hall today. In about 2 weeks, we're going to have our first Ask Me Anything session that will hold on Twitter, I believe. So it is open for everyone to join as well. Come with your questions. Again, it's the Ask Me Anything session. And then in June, we'll be having the same thing as well. A town hall and Ask Me Anything session. So primarily we're having 2 events per month. There might be some other events in the middle, but primarily we're having 2 events per month. That these events are tailored to you, tailored to meeting you where you are at. Every kind of woman, every kind of expertise level, every kind of experience levels that you're on, right? So these conversations are going to be led by women, powered by women. Think female brilliance of sorts, and we are going to be not just hearing things. We are going to be guided into the application of the things that we've learned, because again, it's not important that which you've learned, it's more important what you did with what you've learned, right? And then we'll be having proposal writing sessions where we train people on how to write proposals. um, One of the metrics, one of the things that we are aiming to achieve here is producing quality proposals. And it is important that we first start with training people on how to write proposals. So we'll be having like a proposal training session on how you could write your proposals. We know that you have ideas. We know that funding is always the problem for the African man, for the African woman. And so we are going to be the middleman. We're going to bridge that gap between you and funding. So that idea that you thought of as a 13-year-old when you thought, life was going to much, much easier with your lab coats and your chemistry labs, and whatever ideas that you've had, that you've honed, whatever pain points that you've had, whatever burdens you carry, that that it's AI and blockchain can help you build, can help you implement, can help you achieve. We are going to be helping you write proposals for those ideas, and we're going to be pointing you to where you can get the money from, so that you can literally change the world. And the world changing thing that everybody says, it starts from one person moving on to 10 and 100 and you know 1,000 and 1,000,000. So yeah, we are getting there bit by bit. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining this town hall. This town hall is more than just a gathering. It is a declaration. And this declaration is one where African women are not just participants in AI revolution. We are builders, we are innovators, we are ethicists, we are storytellers, we are system shapers, really. um think female brilliance again. Think that the future is female and future is AI and the future is African female brilliance. And so our hope was born out of a deep passion to make space, real space, for African women to thrive in the worlds of AI and emerging tech. And this is a space where our cultural intelligence, because really that is probably one of our biggest potentials, our cultural intelligence, lived experiences, and community first thinking aren't just welcome, they are central. And so today we'll be having three themes. The first is rooted in culture, powered by code, where Idara, the DECA informant, will be walking us through some really amazing things, reaffirming the power of African creativity in AI design, from language preservation to artistic expression. She's going to be sharing her insights from her work in blockchain and AI with us, that is centralized on rooted in culture, powered by code. And I'll be having the popular, famous, beautiful Baba speaking to us on the algorithm and her voice, where she'll be reminding us that technology is never neutral and that our voices matter in shaping fair and ethical systems. Um, yeah, and then we have Onye with us, who is the CEO at Tech Hive Academy. If you do not know Tech Hive, you should probably look them up. And she'll be working us through redesigning the blueprint. And I know that the goal here is for us to be challenged to think boldly, because what if the future of tech was designed with African women leading at every level? Just imagine how ChatGPT, for instance, would sound if we had something like that. And so, yeah, we are here to explore big questions, share real stories, um, connect with each other in a way that truly matters, in a way that makes social prescription in medicine, it's a thing in medicine, really proud. We are here to act on things and not just wait for things to happen. The future doesn't happen to those who wait, but to those who create it, right? And so whether you're new to AI, you're building your models, you are trying to get into blockchain, you've been hearing about decentralized AI solutions. You're probably working in, I think they call it basic tech now, like project management or animation, whatever it is. Or you're creative, or you work in healthcare or finance, or you're a trader, or you're a mom who just wants to learn things, or you're a girl who's still trying to figure things out. You are welcome here because you belong here. And together, we are going to create a future where African women don't just fit into systems, where we design those systems. So let's build boldly, let's build loudly, let's build with sisterhood in mind. So, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. And without further ado, let us welcome our very first speaker, Idara. Idara will be speaking to us on the topic rooted in culture, powered by code. Hi, Idara. How are you? Uh, Idara, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Uh,
Hi. Good morning. Good morning.
yes, I'm actually I'm actually Idara Star. I'm a curious child. What I do basically is to give information on decentralized finance and internet money on X. Something useful, profitable that can help us grow our portfolios in the next few years and retire and retire us. Okay, that's basically what I do, and it's very nice to be on the show. Thank you, the host Mariam, for this opportunity to speak here and everyone for participating and sparing their time here. All
Mm.
right, so now we're talking about the topic rooted in culture powered by code.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So now the first thing I would say is that okay, let me put my face so you can see me. So I just say hello all the time. All right. I don't know if you can see me.
No, not yet.
All right. Okay. All right, can you see me now?
Yes, I can. Hello.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. All right, now, so okay, now that you can see me, I feel like we are more on a personalized level. All
Yes,
right,
I think this first time I'm
good.
seeing your face as well.
All right, this is my face, actually, my morning fix, because I just recently woke up. All right, back to the topic. Rooted in culture, powered by code. When you're talking about building with culture, what comes to your mind is like, I'll use this analogy, cooking jollof rice with your grandmother recipe. Even if you use a modern stove or rice cooker, the essence still comes from tradition. So it doesn't change the taste or aroma as long as the recipes are from your grandma. The recipes are your grandma recipes. It's still there, and that is how the culture is. The culture is still there, even if we move or technology move into another different sphere. Our culture still stands. It's still there. It's still deep rooted. Now, firstly, I would say that if we are talking about building with culture in mind and how it has shown up in my work or in my activities, I would say that you see this regular chatting with AI chatbots for educational purposes. So what I do basically is that m- whenever I am confused about a particular thing, or let's say um, I need some clear terms in not just English, let's just say my local dialect. Do you know that they've integrated these languages, like the three main languages first in Nigeria, this is Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, into AI, and that when you ask AI in Yoruba, AI a question in Yoruba, or you ask AI a question in Pidgin, AI responds. AI responds. AI knows about it. Do you get that kind of thing? So basically, 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 you see, AI has actually gone beyond, it has crossed borders. It has gone beyond just being in the European world. It has come to Africa. And now we've started seeing a lot of languages onboarded. The main languages, though, from different countries, from different regions. So we have Swahili, we have I don't know the language they speak in Egypt, but we have the language they speak there. We also have the one from Ethiopia. There's a particular language they speak in Ethiopia. They also have it. I was actually communicating with an Ethiopian guy, and the Ethiopian guy did not know that actually was an English person, because I could communicate with him through what this chat bots, this AI chatbot or Google Translate. So that is basically how it is now. Everything is no longer once centered on one particular system or one particular place. It is now moving globally, and that is the purpose. That is the purpose. And then,
Okay. All
all right.
right. So then that was actually really interest. I did not know that we could do that yet. Like speak
Oh,
to, I know that there are AI translators. I've seen, I've had to like use them, like just copy and paste and translate and stuff. But to know that it's more interactive now, that's really insightful, and I think that that's great. Probably it's a step forward. I'd like to consider it a step forward. But
yeah.
then, moving on, I'd also like to ask, in what ways have you seen AI support the preservation of African languages, our fashion, our music, our art. Um, because again, I'm of the very pessimistic view sometimes that we are just data mines for Western
Mm.
tech. I would like to know that in your experience, have you seen AI preserve the African, culture, our fashion, our languages, our art, our music? Do you
Of
think?
course, of course, of course, if you actually ask AI about the Yoruba, let's say this Yoruba popular clothes, Ashoke. If you ask AI about Ashoke, I must say Ashoke. AI will tell you what Ashoke is. AI will bring it, will even tell you where it is gotten from, the region it came from, the culture it belongs to. That is how far it has gone globally and also in Africa. So I have seen it. I have seen it with my own eyes. Now you can actually ask AI what's the difference between a kente and an ashoke, or a dansiki, or and a kente. Kente, I think, is for Ghanaians. Ashoke or a dansiki. So they will tell you the difference, and they will tell you, I need to tell you which culture it belongs to. That is how AI has gone. That is how far it has gone. So it's more like a digital storyteller who never forgets about forgets and never sleeps. That is AI for you.
Okay, okay. I think that's really nice to
Yeah.
learn then. Okay, so All right. So in some ways, we are seeing that AI is, getting more um informative as regarding, African cultures and stuff. So I think probably if we probably the consuming of this tech is causing the enablance of, because AI basically that built on language models, right? So I think
Yeah,
that
it
that's
does.
that's great. It's a step forward. We are still getting there, because I know that several times if you like want to I remember I was trying to do a quick search with I think ChatGPT or so, and I was trying to look for this Yoruba phrasing. And what I was getting, I was like, I'm like, bro, you're worse than me, and I'm not even a fluent speaker. So yes, I think that's great. I think that
That's
we can
true.
we can do better, anyways. Okay, then I'll
Oh,
take my
perfect.
next question. Would be, why do you think it's very important for African women to create with context and not just consume tech built on somewhere else? And this is something that is not just even for African women, right? I had a conversation with one of the biggest thought leaders on LinkedIn for African startups. He's
Hmm.
Rwandan, living in the US, and I remember him saying that, see, the problem is not even the building of the tech, is that will the African man consume the African man's thing? That we have this thing where we feel like, oh, if it's foreign, it's of better quality and should be trusted more as regards to something that was African, right? And then in a
Yeah,
way, I was trying to like counter that. Oh, I remember saying this about 3 years ago in one random meeting. One time I had in Uyo that was at a finance meeting with yes, I remember saying that. Oh, for me as the Nigerian woman, if I want to buy tie and dye, and I'm
yeah,
abroad, right? And I see a
yeah,
Yoruba man selling tie and dye, maybe someone from Ibadan selling tie and dye, on the same street with an Italian selling tie and dye, I most likely will go and buy from the Yoruba man, because I do not think that the Italian man knows what to do about tie and dye. And I think that I trust the Yoruba man over the Italian man because it's our thing, right? So I was like, oh, so I think that if we learn to create things more, would find that there are the things that we think are Western things are just things. Like we could also have African things. But then he was just like, see, the problem is consumption, right?
yeah.
Besides getting money for tech, the Africans are not willing to consume African things. So in your opinion, what would you say? How would you say why is it important for us to then create in contests instead of consuming tech like that?
All right, I will start by saying that you got it right there when you mentioned this analogy of you going to a Yoruba person to purchase tie and dye than an Italian person who doesn't really know where the culture or know much about the culture of tie and dye. That is one thing. Another thing is that it is like you using imported tech without context, more like you wearing winter boots in Lagos, knowing fully well that winter boots doesn't feel fit well in Lagos in a very hot weather, in a very hot sun. Are you putting on these hoodies, these thick hoodies under hot, scorching sun? I see a lot of people doing that with European clothes. You understand? And I would ask myself, see, they make this clothes to fit what? To fit their reality over there, to fit their reality in in the European world, because that place is cold. So they make all these things to make what, so people there staying there would feel comfortable. Now, why would you want to consume tech, just consume tech without context built somewhere else? Yes, you can actually look for ideas. I'll say it's important to look for ideas, use it towards fish out ideas, but let it be what's in context with what you have, with in context with the African culture. Do you understand? So don't just build tech because, okay, yeah, I want to solve this thing. The main thing, the first problem that you should start solving is within your what's immediate environment. Your immediate environment should be the first place you solve a problem. You see, most Europeans, most let's just use for instance Trump. You look at the tariffs that are going on in US and stuff like that, tariffs between the US and China, most especially, you understand. Now, Why do you think Trump is actually making all these tariffs? Why do you think Trump is trying to put all these things on imported goods and services? Why is he doing all these things? It's because what he saw an immediate problem in his country. He saw that their country reserve, their country bills, their country loans it is being used anyhow. It's used carelessly, and somehow a lot of this careless attitude has cost America a lot. It has cost America a lot, both in financial sector, the economic sector, mental, psychology, everything. And so now what he wants to do is what imposing these tariffs to what build his nation. That is the problem he's solving within his nation. He thinks of his nation first before others. And that is what we should have in mind. Not that we are being selfish. It's not a selfish thing. It is you finding out what needs, what matters here in the environment before you move out to other environments or start thinking of solving the world problems. So that is it. That is basically what I will have to say about this particular question. I hope that all answers it.
Yes, yes. So basically what you've said, quite profound, is that we really should think about ourselves.
Yep,
The
exactly.
like, and that's something that we are really trying to achieve here at the hub and here at AIBIA. We know that Western tech and Western tools were created to solve Western man's problems, the Western continent's problems, their systemic problems. So if you don't create yours, I don't think that they have enough bandwidth in their minds to think about, oh yeah, how can we create for the Africans? So I think it's us saying,
Very,
okay,
very important.
these are the problems that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this we have, for instance, we have a really large percentage of the unbanked, and we have a really large percentage of people who have no access to financial services, or people who have no access to the internet at all. And it is us saying that, okay, how can we use AI and blockchain and every other tool that we possibly can to fix that problem, to achieve financial inclusion. That's basically it. And once one conversation starts, builds up to the next, builds up to the next, we and action follows ideas, right? We collapse that time between idea and execution. We now see
Yeah,
that, oh yeah, we actually solving the problems that we ought to solve, because we've had conversations about it, because we've looked at ourselves and seen that these are our problems. What can we do about it? Not, oh, these are our problems, so the government should change, the government should help us. It's more like, if removing that huge factor of the government or external forces, or Western tech, is like, okay, yeah, how can the African man actually solve Africans' problems? So yeah, that was really, really profound. So then I would now ask, how can we then use AI to reclaim narratives that have been erased in mainstream media and education, and that is often distorted? And let me give a bit of context rather. So a couple of weeks ago, there was this Instagram video that was really trending. It went viral, and it was about a man. I can't remember his name now. Talking about how Hollywood has failed us with accent representation. That in Africa, there are multiple accents. Like, the accents are several, because the Nigerian doesn't sound like the Ghanaian, right? And the Ghanaian doesn't sound like the Kenyan or the Rwandan or the South African. And Hollywood represents us, sound, all of us, we sound the same, according to Hollywood. And then this person was like, if you want to do representation, starts from respect. Basically, you have to respect the African people, and then you properly represent them. Which means, if this person's backstory is that he's Kenyan, please either you're hiring a Kenyan actor, or you're hiring someone who can at least imitate the Kenyan accent very well. And it was such an interesting discourse. And I was saying that it's so interesting because, for just looking at accents, there's this narrative that has been popular in mainstream media, that the African man sounds this certain way, sounds dullish, sounds poorish, sounds uneducated-ish. and it is just the way you can almost predict how the black person in the movie is going to sound. And I remember saying to someone that it's really interesting because even in Nigeria, all Nigerians do not sound the same. The Igbo man who is educated sounds different from the Igbo man who's uneducated. And even in Igbo land, there is how the Enugus sound, right? People from Enugu, there's how the people from Anambra sound. That's different from how people from Imo sound, right? And I remember that there are certain words, because my mom is Igbo, and I would ask, oh, what word is this? And she'd be like, oh, this is the Anambra's way of pronouncing it. But if we are from Imo, so like, oh, this is how the Imo people pronounce it. And then it's interesting because it's even in the south, right? And it's even a systemic problem in the sense that Africans do not even realize that Africans sound different. So I'm from Akwa Ibom, and I'm quarter ABBO, so my family is really mixed, right? I'm not meeting people and they say, oh, I'm from Akwa Ibom, and I say, oh, you're from Calabar. Oh, shouldn't you sound like this? No, ABBOs do not sound like ethnic people, and so there's just a whole lot of um narratives that have been biased, that have been distorted, that are just false, that have been popular on mainstream media. So, how do you think AI can help us reclaim those narratives? How do you think AI can help us uh, populate our individualism on the global spectrum and even on the continental spectrum? Because like I said, even Africans do not realize it, even Nigerians do not realize that, oh, there are accents differences, and this is how people sound here, and this is how people sound there, and these are the factors that come into play with like environment, stuff like that, just using accents as a bit of context. So how do you think?
Okay. You see, AI is already doing something great with that. AI is already, I think the language model is they're already imputing all this into play. Now, you see, AI is like a mirror. If we don't shape it, it reflects someone else's face. So it all bounds to us. Yes, we are the ones to give the prompts. We are the ones to build the codes. We are the ones to put it in. That is it. So now, for instance, now let's say you just like the example you gave, the instance you gave. Okay, the Hollywood people, they want to do a Nigerian film. Do you understand that kind of thing? And then they look at our Nollywood actors, and most of our Nollywood actors, most of them that are educated, might not really sound like Nigerians. They will not really sound like a particular culture. Let's say they are looking for. Let me narrow it down to. Let's say they are looking for an Hausa. No, Hausa. They have this accent. They are still having this strong accent. Let's look for other cultures like uh let's use Yoruba for instance. Let's do Yoruba. A Yoruba speaker who probably hasn't been in Nigerian or stayed in the village or stayed in his local town and has been overseas for his whole life, let's say UK, will not inherit the language. He won't have that accent. He won't have that accent that is needed for that role. Why? Because he doesn't stay in Nigeria. Although he's from Nigeria, his parents are from Nigeria. He doesn't stay in Nigeria. That is it. His accent is about it actually matches his environment, his immediate environment. Do you get it? So now that kind of person cannot be the one to influence narratives of the African mind because he doesn't really know much about it. He doesn't really know more anything about. He doesn't really know the stories behind certain things. But he doesn't have the history. He doesn't have the history of Mark. So we cannot blame him. Why? Because his environment is different. You can only grow to what you are exposed to. So he's not exposed to the African things, the African mindset. You can blame him. A lot of people put a lot of blames on people, say, oh, you're Nigerians, you from this particular state, why don't you have this accent, this and that, da 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 da. No, you can only grow to what you are exposed to. You cannot do. See, if it is within your immediate environment, they speak let's say Yoruba, and you converse daily with a Yoruba person, there is no how you won't speak Yoruba. And there's no how you won't also have such accents. Why? Because in order to pronounce some words clearly, you need to articulate in those words. You need to articulate in those sounds. So you see it. So that is it. But AI now, AI, I've seen some integrations in the AI system. Now we can say that AI has started imputing they have started putting in pigeon. I don't know if you have conversed in pigeon with AI, or probably on WhatsApp too. AI can speak pigeon. AI can speak pigeon. So now imagine if AI can speak pigeon, and that uh imagine how AI can actually change these distorted views, these narratives, by doing one thing. What? By we, let's say an African person, learning how to create these language models to implement our culture in it. You see, the more we African people are educated on AI, are educated on how to build these codes on AI, how to make these systems, we can now be the ones to put in this, because you cannot expect a European to put in our stories. It's not possible. We are the ones to do that. We are the ones that have the history. It's our history, not theirs. So we have to put it. So that means we need proper education, and proper education on these things, and also exposure to them.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. That was really brilliant. Okay, so just one more question before you go, because I know you have to go now, and our next speaker is ready. Uh, for so if a young African woman wanted to start to use AI in really creative ways, where do you think she should start, and what kind of mindset should she have?
All right, I'll use this analogy. you know what sculptors? A sculptor who a sculptor is. He plays with clay. That is what I literally know. I literally know who or what a sculptor does. Now, you can start like a sculptor with clay. You don't need the whole statue at first, just the shape. Just the shape. Start with the shape. And by time, little by little, start with evolving. Little by little, you start with creating. So that is how you should start. If you're a young African woman and want to use AI in creative ways, you should start by solving a small problem around you. I always talk about it. I talked about the immediate environment here. I put a lot of emphasis there. What is it? What is in your immediate environment that needs solving, that needs a solution? Look at that. Then, if you want to integrate AI into what you do, start by learning what AI is. Start by learning probably the language models, because the Europeans won't do it for you. They won't give you that thing that you want. So if you want to put it in, if you want this AI to work for you, to work according to what you think, you are the one to put it there. And that means you need to do some background study, do some background knowledge, try to educate yourself on it. And that way, from building bricks, you can get to the top. Thank you.
Okay, okay, that was such a beautiful advice, beautiful guidance of sorts. Thank you so much, Ida. Everyone, let's
Yeah,
applaud.
it's a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ida. So, are there any questions for Ida before she goes? She has to go host a blockchain Twitter space right now. So, are there any questions for Ida before she goes? You can unmute your mic to ask, or you could leave one in the chat box. And so we don't have so much time for this because she has to go now. But please, if you have a question, feel free to ask. Okay, 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 okay. Okay, then, in the absence of none, thank you, Ida. Thank you so much for coming to share your insights with us. We are super, 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 super grateful. We hope to have you soon, especially on Twitter for one of our spaces. Thank you so much, Ida. We really are so grateful. Thank you
It,
for your
it's a
time.
pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you too. Thank you guys for listening. All right, I'm off now.
All right, thank you. Bye. Okay, guys, I hope that that was an insightful session for you. And that's session one. That was either uh, speaking to us on Rooted in Culture, powered by Code. And we're so glad that she was able to spend about 30 minutes with us. Thank you, guys, for sitting in. Everyone who joined in the middle, welcome to our very first town hall here at the Africa's Women in AI Community Hub. This is more than just a garden. This is a declaration for the African woman. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Uh, for those who have been here from the beginning, yeah, sit tight. It's getting hotter. It's getting hotter. We are, you know, climbing the ladder of sorts. So yeah, for our next session, we have Oluwaseyi Oluboba. I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly. Please correct me if I did not. Who is a creative and programs lead Creative, currently based in Lagos, Nigeria. She's a lawyer turned programs lead at a tech events company and is building a creative services business named the Boba Creative. You guys should really check the Boba Creative out. Her website alone is already proof that you should hire her and her company immediately. And her business is specializing in rendering services like project management, voiceover, over in spoken words, course content design, and mobile videography. She's an ambivert that learns fast and is eager to grow and impact the world around her. And when she's not managing projects and creating content, she's watching sci-fi films and YouTube videos. So everyone, let's give a warm welcome to Shei Boba, who will be speaking to us on the algorithm and her voice. And our focus for this session is to learn how to really explore how women can shape AI systems as builders, researchers, and users, how ethical AI and responsible innovation can be rendered through gendered lenses, and how biases in data sets affect African women and what we can do about it. So sit tight, it's going to be such an impactful session. Ashayi, are you here? Hello.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. The previous session I sat through that and it was quite informative as well. I feel like your community members are eating good, and it's such a pleasure to see. Um,
Yeah,
okay,
thank you so much.
you're welcome. So my name is Boba. Yeah, so it's Olu Boba. You tried actually. Boba is a nickname that's coined from half of my surname. And yes, I'm Yoruba because people always ask that. I'm honored to be here in this room having this important conversation around AI and women and inclusion. Special thanks to Miriam and the AIBIA team for having me and for putting this together. I hope everyone is having a lovely and informative afternoon. So I know Miriam has set me up for a couple of questions, but before I go into that, just as like a little introduction, um, whilst researching lightly for this, I came up with some stats, and I think it would be useful for our conversation and just to like lay some context, right? So according to Coursera, women are less sure about AI's role in their professional success. For instance, only like 36% of women compared to 45% of men believe that Gen AI tools can really advance their careers and their lives. And so you can already tell that the number is quite low, just 36%. According to AWS, that's Amazon Web Services, um, the the margin is slightly higher for professional women, but it's still quite low as well. 55% say that they believe that Gen AI skills can help progress their work and everything. And so it's important to note that not a lot of women are interested or are participating or are knowledgeable about AI and its benefits. And that's why communities like this exist. And it's important to lean into it so that we can maximize these benefits, right? And also so that we can be represented. Because as much as I like to think that women are human beings just as much as men are, and I don't like to lean into unnecessarily women exclusive things, because sometimes it's like, is there really a difference? But then there is a difference, because we are wired in a certain way as women, especially African women, right? We're wired in a certain way. We have certain strengths and proclivities. And I feel like that's being represented in AI will also go a long way in helping mold how effective it can be as a tool, right? So that being said, AI is a tool. It is a tool that can be used, misused, or abused, right? And it's up to you to determine how that tool is wielded in your hands. Would it be a springboard or would it be a crutch? Because I keep seeing a lot of jokes on Instagram about how AI is going to take over the world and how a lot of people have not become useless because of AI. And so there's always a fine balance, you know. Everything should be a springboard and never a crutch. So I'll start by sharing like my thought process, quickly, my context with AI. But before that, I want someone or anyone in the comments to just share what is the most serious thing that you've used AI for, and also what is the silliest thing that you have used AI for. Um, in a second, I'll just like to know. I'll share mine as well. But if you can type in the comments, what's the most serious thing you've used AI for, and then what's the silliest thing that you've used AI for? So whilst we're typing that, let me just give a little bit of context as to where my headspace is at when it comes to AI, right? At first I was skeptical. My sister used to use AI a lot. She's a communications expert and she's into finances and everything. And she used to use AI to kind of give her skeletal structures for things and just help start research. And I used to think it was cheating. I'm like, come up with it from your brain, search the web, do your research. Why are you relying on this thing? But then gradually I started approaching it with a more open mind, and she explained to me how it's not it's not cheating if you use it rightly. Note I said AI can be used, misused, or abused. It's not cheating if you use it the right way, and if you don't use it only, right? And so generally I then started to use it, and I'm like, okay, this makes work faster because it gives me something to start with. Like I said, a springboard, right? So it gives me something to start with. So now I use AI. I use ChatGPT and all the likes, but then I also try to maintain my originality and to avoid over dependence. So if I'm using AI to start research, I make sure that I do the rest myself. I add my own thoughts, my own opinions, my own spin. So I'm not copying and pasting, right? And also sometimes I actually try to do things for my brain just so that I'm not overly dependent on AI. There's also that fine, balance. So let me quickly check the chat. Is anyone writing anything? Okay. Use it for a job application. Okay, that's pretty serious. Easy to develop a brand character. Okay, okay. Creating a pixel. Okay, that's good. Research for an academic essay. Serious fashion advice. Okay. Brainstorming. Okay, that's good. That's nice. Same. I've the most serious thing I've used AI for is for my work, right? Coming up with starter ideas, starter topics. The most unserious thing, there was one time I just sat down and I was like, AI, how can I make millions in 3 months? Because the economy was getting to me, and I was I was like, bro, where are people seeing this money? So I actually checked it and it gave me a plan. I kid you not, although I did feed it like what I currently do, my skill sets and all. And it did give me a plan. In fact, it's because I wrote a beg at some point. It's not just speaking pigeon back to me. My guy, this is how we can make this bag. I say, wow. So it can be very interesting, but it's good to hear back from you guys. And all of that. Like Miriam said earlier, AI is beyond ChatGPT. It's evolving every day from audio and visual generation to deep scientific and like medical analysis, right? It's evolving every day. But I just want to put a disclaimer out now. I am not particularly an expert. In fact, I am not an expert. I'm not here to give any like deep technical knowledge, or like our previous speaker that is into blockchain and all of that. I'm also learning myself, but I am here to share beginner steps for no code babes like me, who are just coming into this space, and how we can approach things. Yeah, so it's important to have that in context. So, Miriam, do I just go on, or do you want to start hitting me with your questions? Also, please, if at any point you stop hearing me, please let me know so that I can adjust myself and my network. Okay. How to take revenge on someone, and wow, that's so interesting. I like this responses. So it just shows that I'm not the only one that also uses AI for sometimes unserious things. That's amazing. Miriam, if you're speaking, I think you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Oh, so
Yeah.
sorry. So yeah, I was
Okay.
saying that yes, the revenge thing. I saw it and I was like, oh Grace, oh Grace. I did that. Now that's a very interesting idea. I mean, I've used AI to rant as well. Like, okay, so this is what happened. Am I wrong? You
Do you
said, tell me.
get?
Am I wrong? And at the point, I was thinking, God, should be there's a therapist for this. Why are you stressing ChatGPT?
Do you get? Like, if you cannot afford therapy, you might as well start from somewhere.
Oh, hello. So yeah, okay. So yeah, you have already started on a very interesting. I think you're on a very interesting speed, and you've hit a certain pedestal. But we had a couple of questions we're going to ask, and then one of them though is okay. Let me start with this one. What are some real world consequences of biased data sets, especially for African women?
Okay. Um, so just for clarity for anyone who's not really clear on the heaviness in or the technical terminology in that question, AI runs on data, right? Data is the fuel for AI. And so data sets are like collections of data that AI uses to generate responses, right? And so, if a data set is biased, it means that there's no full representation, or the data set just basically covers a certain demographic. And so, if the data sets in AI do not have enough accurate data about Black women or African women, or about anybody in general that wants to use it, but in our context, Black women, then the responses are not going to be very appropriate, right? So for instance, a real life consequence, according to MIT Media Lab, they did a study, and they found out that facial recognition systems misidentify Black women at a higher error rate. So that means the AI data sets that were used to conduct this study did not have enough data on the structure, the color, the texture, the features in the African woman's face. And so there were higher errors, in that compared to, like, say, a white or a Mexican or a Caucasian, face. That's a real world. For instance, now if you were to go for an interview to get a visa, and they were to use an AI face scan, if the data set is not accurate, it would not match you with the picture in your document, and that could delay your visa outcome, that could deny you entry. There could be actual real consequences for these things. And then earlier we spoke about the language as well. Language models may associate African sounding names to lower socioeconomic roles. How there was a time in the world where Black people were only seen as slaves. So sometimes if the data sets are not accurate, you can be feeding your voice to an AI tool for something, and then it just automatically concludes that you are poor because of the way you sound. And that's not a nice thing. That's not accurate. That's not fair. Regardless of whether you are broke at the time or not, it should not be a thing. Do you get? So there are real issues, or how in healthcare, you know, is a healthcare AI tool may not be able to account for the differences in the symptoms in African women. Do you know that I recently found out that sickle cell only exists in the Black race? It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
yeah. So I did not personally know that until I did some research and then I found that out. Now, imagine if there is no representation. Someone with sickle cell could be trying to get a diagnosis, but then is giving the person something else because it has not taken into account the fact that the sickle cell trait is only limited to Black people. So you can see that it will now be a problem. There will be a misdiagnosis, and that is not very good. That's not very great. So at the end of the day, these are not just technical flaws, but like it's just reflecting inequalities, reflecting a gap that needs to be filled. And that's why everybody, everywhere, every Black woman everywhere needs to start feeding Black woman accurate data to AI so that the responses and the generations can be more accurate. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is just I think it's not negotiable at this point that the data properly represents us. And
Yeah.
it is something that the entire continent struggles with. Data collection, data retention, data use, data storage. Gosh, especially in healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
data is just everywhere. Good goodness. Data is just everywhere. You always have to do pen and paper, which is prone to loss and
Mm-hmm.
disasters and all of that. And you don't even know how many people are in a place, or how many women, or how many what's the mortality rate. Like, we don't know all these things because data sets are not there, right? And I remember that the conversation I'd spoken about during the first session with one of these thought leaders in AI and startups building, and he said, "Oh, okay, but then another problem is we are not building centers. We are not preserving our own data. So even if we
Mm-hmm.
want to build language models on African data, where can we get African
That's
data
it.
from?
Yeah.
And
Actually,
where are
it's
we
true.
our chips? Where are we importing chips from? We are always just so used to importing and importing. Nobody wants to build. Nobody wants to consume as well. So it's just really, really it's sad, right? It can be very sad to think about and worrisome. But I think that with conversations like this, I know that would be able to spark action within us
Mm-hmm.
and you know outside of us, outside of the community, outside of the organization. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Boba. All right, so then I'll then ask, from what you know, what you've studied in work, maybe or wherever else, what do you think what steps can we take to ensure that we have more ethical and inclusive data sets?
Okay. So I think we've already touched on a couple of them, and first thing we can do is to diversify the data, and that basically means including more African languages, African dialects, African faces, African healthcare patterns, like we've shared, African stories, just imputing more African context. Now, I know that some of us might not have access to like the core data sets where we can actually change things, but in your regular day-to-day use of AI, you can start from there. For instance, when you want to ask for something, you can qualify and say, oh, for a Nigerian lady living in Lagos that likes Ankara, what can do you get? So that is your own subtle way of including diverse data. So AI is recording that, okay, this is this person's context. This is probably what this person will like. And then if it's not correct, you can also impute feedback that no, Ankara is not this. Ankara is actually this. Do you get? So in that way, you are subtly imputing data that will be relevant because AI is consistently iterating, is consistently advancing and getting better. The AI that was launched years ago is more advanced than now is more advanced than the one that was launched years ago. So it's important to be more context specific when you are asking, even for the littlest things, because you're doing your own quota of imputing data. That's one. Then participatory design, getting people from a larger demographic involved, in data sampling, in data curation, in getting feedback, not just the elite people that have thousands of naira to pay for data subscription on the internet, like the marketplaces, the regular, African lady or African guy, just getting context from these people for whatever you are, for whenever you are gathering data, because it's easy to just sit down and just get context online from people that have money to pay for data and have money to, you get me, but like including other demographics as well. Participatory design is one way of, becoming more inclusive. Another thing is to audit the tools more frequently, right? Use bias detection tools and maintain transparency with your data sources. Again, this one might apply more to people in the space that deal directly with that data, but consistently, reviewing your, for instance, your prompts, your systems. I know the last time I used ChatGPT, I got a prompt that, oh, this is a newer version. Do you like this? Sometimes you give me two answers. Do you like this one or do you prefer this other response? Do you get? And so those things, they certainly help to refine the system. And then I think another thing is, if you're ever in a space where you can contribute to the conversation, you can push for more open African-led data sets. But again, this one may not really apply to every single person. But if they are collecting something and they're trying to say, okay, the regular average American does this and this, okay, push for them to also do that same thing for the regular African or the regular Nigerian or the regular Lagosian or wherever you stay. Do you get? So ensuring that it's always represented is also a good way to do this. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. So someone was asking how to add data, and that's basically what you've answered by the way we impute prompts to like generative AI, for instance, ChatGPT. Giving it more context is training it better. So that in the near future, as it's improving and improving and improving, it's remembering the context by which you have provided it. There are certain times that I've fed ChatGPT certain prompts, and then much in a different chat entirely. We are working on something together, and it brings up, oh, but, and it puts some sort of information about the context that provided it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I go, oh, you remember? Okay, but like that's not like me. That is me for that chat. This is what we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to achieve in this chat now. So yeah, I think it's interesting that if we can remember that these things remember, because they're built to remember, then we should be, better mindful of the kind of, just think of it as doing your little quota, as doing the little you can do right now. Since you can't build, you can at least feed um generative AI for starters. So yeah, thank you, Muba, for sharing that. Okay, so I think my next question would be, um, what tools or learning pathways would you recommend for African women looking to enter or scale in AI as a field?
All right. So the first thing is to be curious, right? To be interested, because you cannot learn more or participate in something you're not interested in or curious about. And after that is to now take steps to actually feed that curiosity and gain knowledge. And you can start with free resources: Google AI, Deep Learning AI, Data Camps, Coursera, AI for Everyone. You can even ask ChatGPT that, okay, I want to learn more about AI. What are some free resources? Or you can Google it, right? Starting with free resources and just learning more, and then being exposed to more. For instance, that's how I gained as much knowledge, even though I still have a long way to go. But by virtue of my work and being in spaces and interacting with people and having to do certain things has exposed me to um more knowledge as well. Then joining communities is another thing. Communities like Zindi, Black Women in AI, Data Science Nigeria, Women in Machine Learning, even AI BIA as well. This community that you're currently in, is a good place to start, because in those communities there will be shared values, shared materials. There's a word I'm looking for. Is it material? Resources, yeah, shared resources, maybe even jobs that could expose you to these things. So joining communities is also a good way. Getting hands-on and actually using AI to build things, depending on your sector, thinking of the best way to improve, or thinking of ways to improve your processes, improve the quality of your output using AI. And so that means you'll be interacting with AI more. And as you do that, you grow in your knowledge, you grow in your expertise, you figure out what works, what does not work, and all of that. And yeah, using AI in your day to day, and also using AI to actually build new things. If you're stepping even further after day to day, okay, how can I be more innovative in my space? There's also that. And then I think the last thing I'll say is follow or find role models, find people that you can observe from afar, learn from, maybe read their books if they have, read their articles, watch their YouTube videos. YouTube is a good marketplace for somewhat free knowledge, because now some people have started subscribing, but like YouTube is a good place for lots of free knowledge. So find people that are using AI for impactful things, and then just follow them and learn from them. So yeah.
Okay. So guys, you've heard her. If you are looking to learn or scale in AI, joining communities is a great way to start. And this is one of such communities. So you are in the right place and you belong here. And thank you for Boba for that terrific answer. Okay, so then you had mentioned role models, right? Um, but then I want to ask something that is a bit personal. I'd like I'd like to ask, can you like share an experience where mentorship or having a role model or a certain skill set has made a big difference in your career?
Okay. I haven't really gotten formal mentorship yet when AI is concerned. However, I did start off my session by talking about my sister. And so I think she's one of the people that has subtly, unconsciously, informally mentored me in that regard, by providing, first of all, exposure and then direction. Watching her use it to elevate her productivity, was enough to encourage me to do same. And by doing that, I've had access to opportunities that have required me to use my knowledge from what I have learned from her to fulfill those obligations. And so just watching her, listening to her, and observing her, gaining direction has helped me gain some certain level of like primary, basic, novice level skills that have then translated into productivity in my work. So, yeah, that's basically how mentorship has been for me in that regard.
Okay, that's really interesting. Just by watching, you've also implemented what one person is doing, and I think that should be like a call or like some sort of reminder to every one of us here. The truth is, we may not really see in full grasp how many lives we are impacting with our day to day, right? I remember there was a time when I was in uni, I had recommended a book in our student fellowship. I had just, casually talked about how much I like to read, and I had just talked about a book that I'd read, Failing Forward. And it took months, literally months. And then so months after, this guy just walks up to me and he was like, "Oh yeah, he was at that um fellowship where I'd mentioned this book, and he read it. Like he made sure to like buy it the week after. That he bought it and he read it, and he just wants to say thank you for recommending the book because that's changed his life." I don't want to say did the book change my whole life, but I just felt, oh, that's wow. I felt really humbled, and it was like ever because I just used to, if I like something I would talk about it, books, movies, food, sports. Hamala sports to be very precise. And so I remember that over the time, before then I had casually would just casually say books, just mention, oh, this book and that book and this book, and then he comes and he's like, oh, thank you so much for this recommendation, and he bought the book changed his life, and he does not take, ever since then he doesn't take my recommendations for water. He always listens for whenever I'm recommending a book in a conversation. And I was just thinking, oh wow, me, I just read a book and I was yapping to somebody about it, and somebody read that book and the person says his life was changed. Wow, okay. Just okay. So my point is, um changing the world again, like I said, starts with one, that then moves on to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to a million. And it's very important that for us, we see our careers as more than ourselves. We see our work as more than ourselves. And so if you do things to the best of your ability, you are able to unconsciously and consciously impact the lives of other people. So that somebody would say, oh, they actually got into AI because you just kept talking about it on your status. And now they are building the next probably Down syndrome prediction tool thingy, whatever. Really, we really cannot put a cap to how many lives we can influence and impact on the day to day. So yeah, thank you, Boba, for sharing that. Okay, so we're almost out of time for your session, but I still have a few questions here. So I'd ask, why does representation in AI, although we've talked a little about this, but then for once to look at it from the more technical aspects, why does representation in AI research and engineering teams matter so much?
Okay. It matters because AI basically reflects the people who build it. It reflects their biases, their context, their perceptions, their opinions, their way of thinking, how their outlook. And so having people in those rooms that can provide their own kind of context, helps other people with similar context to relate. And so it's important that um you are able to represent the people that you represent, basically, in when AI is concerned. And then without African women in the room, tools may not really understand us. They might not understand our accents, our context, our pain points, our ambitions. For instance, African men are still trying to even understand African women today. It's now a white man that will now understand an African woman. Do you get? So there are certain, like I started off by saying, there are certain strengths, nuances, um attention to detail, certain context, things that we relate to that other people may not really relate to. And so having people in those rooms helps to capture to a good extent, because obviously it can't be 100%, but like helps to capture the foundation and the basics of our context of what makes us us. And so it also helps to prevent monocultural thinking. Like you shared earlier, according to, there was a very classic example of that showed this when they were doing Wakanda Forever. The accent that they used, they now just think everybody in Africa sounds like that, like the same thing. And so when they now started producing Nigerian movies, the Nigerians, they were not sounding like you get Nigerians. And so having different people of different contexts in the room helps to prevent monocultural thinking. So you don't assume that everybody in Africa, we live in the same place, we dress the same way, we talk the same way. So yeah, basically.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. So it is important that um, representation comes into play in AI research and AI building, because AI, reflects the data sets that it is built on. Okay, then one last question. Looking ahead, what does an equitable and inclusive AI landscape look like, and how do you think we can get there?
Okay. So from a non-technical, non-coding, you know, perspective, it looks like AI being able to fluently speak different African languages. Idara mentioned how she was able to converse with someone. I think she said Swahili, if I'm not mistaken. And the person did not know. Do you get? So like that's just one language. I think she also mentioned that the three languages, the three main languages in Nigeria have been represented. Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. That's just four now that we've counted. There are 100 other languages. And so I think if a future would look like, it might not be realistic to say every single language in the world, but much more than it's already captures, right? AI being able to speak this language fluently. It also looks like AI reflecting our values, um reflecting our context, There are certain things that we do as Africans and Nigerians that we cannot relate to, that the West may not really be able to relate to. So without having to excessively provide excessive context, just by saying, okay, I'm a Nigerian woman in Lagos, I want this, it should be able to give you what you need, right? Without having to refine and refine and refine and then, refine. There's also how AI development is, we're hoping that it looks more decentralized and more Afro-feminist, in its values, meaning, again, we're back to the representation that we should be able to see. And this is not just in ChatGPT and its responses, or it's in other things like we've mentioned, in other innovations and in other developments. We should be able to see things that we can say, okay, an African lady designed this and or was part of the innovation behind this, and the solution is for African women. The solution caters to our needs. Now, obviously, not that everything should not be focused on us, but like we should be able to find ourselves in the innovations that are being created year in year out. Okay, yeah, and then one final thing that comes to mind is it should look like girls in the rural areas being able to build solutions that solve local problems. Like AI should become more accessible, easier to navigate, so that the regular 12-year-old in Ibutemeta can see a problem around her, and use AI, leverage AI to solve it. And so, yeah, more accessibility. That's what I think the future should look like.
Oh, thank you so much. That's actually very hopeful, and the tone of that final note was really hopeful. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. The future that you see, that we all see, is accessibility, ease of use, um, AI that sounds like us, interacts like us, and is able to solve our own systemic challenges. Thank you so much, Baba, for sharing with us today, for spending your afternoon with us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So everyone, please say thank you, Baba. Celebrate her with emojis and in the chat box, or if you can unmute your mic to say thank
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much, Baba. We really are grateful. We really, really are grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Alrighty, alrighty, alrighty. Okay, so without further ado, we're just going to jump right into the next session so that we can go before 2 p.m. Hopefully, I know that it's been back-to-back information, so it's important that we do not overwhelm ourselves today. But welcome, guys, to our last session of the day, session 3, redesigning the blueprint. And we have someone who is absolutely phenomenal with us here today. Her name is Onyinye Nwokolo, and she's the CEO at Tech Hive Adversary and Poly. Yeah, she's the CEO at Tech Hive Adversary, and she's a policy analyst. Um, she's a policy analyst and consultant with nearly 10 years of experience in corporate governance, regulatory compliance, and AI governance rather. She advises companies at the intersection of law, business, and tech, helping them navigate complex regulatory landscapes across borders. As CEO and policy analyst at Tech Hive Adversary, she drives strategic operations and contributes to policy development across Africa and beyond. She's passionate about development policy, innovation, and transformative leadership. And today we have this powerhouse speaking to us on the topic redesigning the blueprint, innovation, leadership, and systems change. Hi, Onye. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. Hello, hello. How
Hi,
are
May.
you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible. I'm
Yes, you
out,
are.
but I'm hoping that I'm audible. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Let me turn on my video a bit so that I am, yeah, so that it's personal.
Yes. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Lovely to see you. You look like just like
Okay.
your photo, really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really lovely to see you. Okay, so let's just go right at it. You've worked in leadership. You've been in leadership for years. You've worked in AI governance and policy development, and that is one thing that's really crucial. In our building here. Systems change, decentralized innovation, leadership, funding, and the rest of it. And we are really, when we're really draft crafting this session, we're really interested in learning how innovation looks like when we center African women in leadership, in funding, in community, what innovation can look like in that sphere. And so I'm just going to ask, in your journey so far, what has leadership in tech or innovation, in governance, what it's like, and how has it evolved over the years?
Okay, so I'll start answering this question. I think that I will not be able to answer this question if I don't make reference to the pandemic. I think that the pandemic schooled us in so many ways, and some of the things that it taught us is that we can find better ways to doing things. Prior to the pandemic, leadership was a bit linear. People thought the thinking of leadership was pretty much from step to step. If I do this and I do that, it produces this. So we say a lot of linear thinking in leadership, right? But after the pandemic, we started to see a lot of changes in the systems, a lot of human capital conversations coming up in leadership and innovation. And one thing that it did was there was now need for leadership to start to embrace adaptive thinking, because we had to adapt to the new, what used to be called the new normal back then, right? So the new normal that came after pandemic. So I think that it's important that we also look at it from that perspective, that there was now more adaptive thinking. People were now thinking of, oh, how do we, because with the more adaptive, with the schooling of the pandemic was now, we had a global talent pipeline. People could literally work for you from different parts of the world. Before now, it was pretty much, when you were thinking leadership and innovation, you're thinking of how do we bring people and systems together. You were thinking of it from the perspective of if, for instance, I have a startup in Lagos, how do I hire somebody in Lagos to do the work? Because the person has to resume in Lagos. But now we had more of a global talent pipeline where you could be talking to somebody in South Africa who is doing the work for your organization. So there was more of adaptive thinking. We had to adapt to the new normal, or to what had become a system of doing things where people had to embrace technology some more. And even how our relationship with technology had to change. We no longer related with technology from a place of it was just something that we had to do. Technology now became an important part in the conversation, right? We then saw conversations around machine learning and even artificial intelligence, how artificial intelligence is even changing the world of work and the system of work. I think recently there was an email that was sent out by the CEO of one of the top tech companies, talking to his staff about how is AI changing your job, right? And how to even start to look at beyond what AI is doing in terms of how it's even changing your job. How do you now fit in such that you don't become obsolete, right? So we see that we're now relating with technology from a place of an important decimal in the conversation, no longer from technology is no longer a solution you use to do your job. Like, well, I need to get something done, I'll leverage on tech to do it. It's now like almost like a present phenomenon in the room. So it's really important. So now it changes leadership, and it has brought changes into innovation, because the leadership now has to think that way. The leadership has to look at adaptive ways of doing things. It's no longer linear thinking anymore. It's now solution-based thinking, adaptive ways. So if, for instance, you and your team were getting something done, leveraging on a technology solution that was created by maybe Indians, for instance, you're asking yourself, based on what is happening now, how can I start to localize this solution such that it will not just serve me, but also serve my industry? So you see a lot of organizations who maybe were not even in finance, but they now start to do embedded finance, because they're looking at how I'm offering a solution, say in education, but I need an embedded finance for people to pay their school fees, because it has now become important for them to do that. So leadership became problem solving. It became adaptative over and above linear thinking. So you have to think for what the situation that you meet yourself. You have to think for the conditions around technology, the way technology is thinking. And sadly, most times you find that even in the midst of this thinking, The laws don't catch up pretty much. The laws will catch up later at the end of the day. But you see organizations that are now, they are doing one thing but delving into something else, right? Because they now see that we need to localize this particular thing that we're doing and see how we can then use it to solve our problem. So leadership has definitely changed from what it used to be to the new schooling that we got and the new ways we saw that we could start to do things after the pandemic. And I answer that question that way because there is a lot of differences that happened after the pandemic. So that is how we can start to trace the changes in tech leadership after then. Yeah.
Wow. Just wow, that is actually very, very, very insightful. And I know that the pandemic was a, is it a turning point of sorts? It's everybody's going to remember the pandemic for a lot of things, for a lot of reasons as well. It really did change our approach to work and how we lead our teams, how we lead our systems, how we, the policies people began to consider. The pandemic really was a turning point. Okay, then, so my next question then would be about the challenges you faced thus far. What structural barriers have you faced and how have you worked to overcome them?
All right, thank you. I think some of the challenges, and I don't even think this is a techie question. It's more of what we find in organizations, the challenge, structural barriers in organizations that could really stop a person or that could pose as an obstruction. And I think one thing I found was even in the way organizations were structured. I'll give you an example. There were organizations that were structured in such a way that you had to queue up behind people because these people, maybe they were ahead of you in terms of either. So I'm trained as a lawyer. So you may find that somebody is ahead of you in terms of maybe they were called to the bar before you were called to the bar, or they got into the organization before you, or you have to report to them. So I find that most organizations were structured in a way that if you come into an organization and you're a smart person, you may have to queue up behind somebody who is ahead of you, and you may not even get a lot of a lot of a lot of approvals for something you want to do because of how the organization is structured, right? Number two was also in how organizations are structured. You may find that people may not shine in terms of their highest strength or their highest ability simply because the organization is structured in such a way that they literally had to queue up. So it's more like before you gain access to certain things, somebody has to, we have to give to this person, this person, this person before you get an opportunity. I work in an organization whereby when you are spotted as a potential, you're given certain opportunities based on your strength, not based on your age. So I would say that one of the barriers is the fact that organizations were structured as families. So it's in families that is senior person, you're sharing something, your mother says the senior person should do this and do that. The senior person gets a lot of benefits, even if they don't necessarily do all of the work. So in the organization I work, one of the things I started to do when I came in was to remove certain structural barriers that if somebody does the work, there should be policies that reward somebody that does the work, whether or not they're senior or they are not. And there are also policies that ensures that if somebody is doing the work and it's apparent that the person is doing the work, it can show that this person is getting the work done. It's really important because you see that young people, there are certain organizations that young people cannot work because they have to queue behind people and it looks like their light is being dimmed. So that's one thing that I found was key in my career growth or in my journey, that these were certain barriers that were almost obstructing. So you see, people cannot thrive in certain places because because of the policies in those organizations, they have to queue up behind people and they don't even get reward for their efforts because because the organization doesn't even realize that this effort was their effort. So the idea is if you're doing something in an organization, it should be apparent that the policies should be structured such that we know that you got this thing done and you get the reward for doing it. So families should be structured. So organizations should not be structured as families. Certain things should not be automatic. It should come to you because you got the work done. So that's the way I'm able to summarily states that.
Wow, that's that's just beautiful. I'd say that's just beautiful, and I think that's something that, me, for instance, and what I'm taking from this is that if you get into spaces where you can make a change, please make that change. So it's interesting that you had experiences with certain structural barriers, and then when you were able to get into leadership, you you made policy changes where people get rewarded for their work regardless of their age or how long they've been at the company. And I think that that's something that's really, really beautiful and really commendable. It's very important that we as women, we make space for growth, we make space for nurturing growth, right? And when we come into leadership spaces, that's mindset of, oh, this is how it used to be when I was, me too as an intern, me too when I was just learning AI, this is how it was. So it's more like, I have gotten here, how can I make the journey easier for others? There is being a pioneer is great. Also, not being a pioneer is also great as well. The important thing is just getting the work done and making room. You know that thing people say, the sky is big enough for plenty stars, that kind of thing. And I think that's something that African women really need to pay attention to as we are building, even if we've been alone in the journey to building. When we get to the spaces where we lead, we are able to make structural changes. Let us not say, oh, we suffered, so others must suffer as well. It is important that we do things that, it's great when we make things easier for people, for the generations coming after us, right? That we're able to change narratives, and it could be the simplest things. Really, it could it could really be the simplest things. But yes, policy changes such as that, they're also very, very important. So if you're facing structural barriers at work, or once you get into that room where you're able to speak and everybody listens, take advantage of it with all of your might. So yeah, thank you Ian, for sharing that. And again, really commendable and really beautiful. Thank you and well done on behalf of all the work that you've done. Thank you so much. Okay then, so I'm going to be asked my next question. I know we're almost out of time, but my next question would be, how can we ensure equitable access to funding, especially for African women founders and builders?
All right. So some of the work that I do, I work with startups a lot and I advise them on funding. And one thing that I'd always say to female-led businesses or female-managed businesses is, do not structure your business as a female-led business. Structure your business as a competitive business. And I say this, and I know that this may sound, but this is a very dispassionate position, because most times when you stand before I know that there's a narrative about how VCs are male dominated, but I can assure you that you'll find VCs who are looking for a competitive business. They are not, because when you stand before a VC, they're not necessarily looking at oh, because he's a female, I want to give this person funding. It's important we have those kind of VCs that are focused on funding female-led businesses. That's very important. That's key, right? But whether or not you are before those kind of VCs, the first thing I'd always say to female-led and female-managed businesses is, can you just work towards having a competitive business? Structure your business to be very competitive. So whether or not, before I even know who my competitors are, I know that the way my business is structured, my idea would catch the attention of anyone I'm speaking to in the room. So that's really the first thing that I would say. I thought it was important to mention that before I then go into other things. Second thing I'm going to say, because when we talk about equity is not necessarily equality. Equity speaks to fairness, yeah? Second thing I'm going to say is there has to be resources, access to resources from people, and also access to resources that you create. You don't want to have a consumer's mindset. You actually want to have a producer's mindset. And I'll explain what that means. You want to really build your business in such a way that you don't wait for people to tell your stories for you. You tell your stories yourself. I have a coach, and my coach once said to me that there was this time that she was on this trip, I think it was a UN trip, and she had recommended a lady for something. And she was so happy because she knew that she could get this thing done. Only for her to get a call from, say, the person that she made the recommendation to say, I can't find so much about her digital blueprint online. I see a website, but it doesn't even say so much. So Don't just consume information, produce information. Tell your story yourself, because there are people that I have clients that did not necessarily apply for a funding. They were found by a VC who was just doing the research and says, I like this solution. They didn't apply for it. They were found. So there are times that you may not even be applying. I've walked into rooms I didn't apply for. I was found. So it's not every time that is your application that will get you into certain rooms, even though that is usually 90% of the story. Your application got you into a particular room, but there are times that you'll be found because you've told your story yourself. So resources, you want to leverage on resources. You want to be in the right rooms. You want to be sure that you have access to what the right information, right? You also want to be sure that, aside even having access to information, you want to be sure that when you're looking for investments, you shouldn't get in bed with any kind of person. It's really important. It's not every kind of investor you should be looking. You should actually, and because it's equitable, we also have to bear in mind that equity is not really just the availability of resources. It's the availability of what kind of resources are we even talking about. There are people you should not really be taking investment from. There are companies that, or investors, you should not actually accept their investments. So you want to do that. You want to early enough ensure that you have your governance in check. Corporate governance, very important. Corporate governance is not always, you don't necessarily need to have a board of directors. You're just starting out. But what will it take to have an advisory board, right? Say I want to do something in furniture, and say what will it take to have someone advise me, who maybe a female, who doesn't even have to be a female or male, who has been in the furniture industry and is now retired, who can give me some ideas on how to get some things done. Resource is very important. The kind of investors that you have is also very important, right? You also want to look at, now, when you now get into the room and you become the person, because people start up as they are startup founders, but we don't remain founders forever. A day comes when you move from founder to becoming an investor, from investor to becoming venture capitalist. Pass on that knowledge, right? Create systems. So take responsibility to create those systems. So you want to create, you may even decide that because I'm a founder and I've gone through these things, I want to coach female-led business founders. If you're a female-led founder, I just want to coach you on the things that I went through that I don't want you to go through again. So that is some of the ways that you can even start to look at the ecosystem and say, this is how we can make funding equitable for women, right? Equity, not equality. I say that, and I keep saying that because it will take a while for us to get to the point where things become at par. But we have to leverage on equity now. That's fairness in terms of, I look at a female-led business and say, what can I really give to this person to ensure that this person has equity and can approach this particular VC or approach this particular investor. And I believe, and one thing I always do is to say, knowledge. I would always tell you, the way you are doing this, can you do it this way? Can you structure your business this way? Because the VC is not looking at your gender force. It's looking at, is this a business I really want to put my money in? So that knowledge, I cannot underemphasize or overemphasize it here.
Wow, 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 wow. That was very much insightful, ma'am. That was very much insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you know, do not see your business as a female-led business, see it as a competitive-led business. Um do not just consume information, produce it, tell your own story, own your own story, and tell your own story. I know that it's a it's a sad reality for many of us that we have to build online these days, but it's also important that this is the way we tell stories now. So let's just wear our big girl pants and tell the stories anyway. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So okay, then for one last question before you go, what does it mean to redesign the blueprint in a world still dominated by Western AI narratives?
I love that question, and that's because I think that in the course of this entire conversation, some of the speakers have even touched on it. without knowing that they were answering the question. But I'll look at it this way, that some of the ways to redesign the blueprint is for you to really start to look at how we need more representation. There is no way we can redesign the blueprint if we do not have more representation. I heard the last speaker and she did so fantastically well when she was talking about how sickle cell is a is is more like a black ailment, right? We need more representation in the room, more representation in of of Africans and maybe Asians or in AI development. It's very important because when we have more representation, right, there's stories about AI or the things that when you the things that AI suggests excuse me suggests to you is not just from a Western perspective, right? Because remember that whosoever is developing AI is deploying into AI what they have, and that's where the biasness comes in. There's the idea of the bias of AI, right? So it's important that when you are redesigning the blueprints, you have representation, not just representation of Africans, representation for African women. And that is why a lot of people on this call will need to rise. You need to really rise because people are waiting for you. You're rising to take up social, maybe social impact innovations, whichever kind of innovation you will take up, because the solution that you're about to build will change the narrative for so many other people. Narrative for Africans, narrative for Asians, narrative for females, narrative for African females. It will change the narrative, right? There is a narrative before AI came into being. There's a narrative of Africa as a place where, when you talk about Africa, there's hunger, there's poverty. You know, think of all the terrible things. Nobody really tells the beautiful story of Africa. Then now, as time event unfolded, we see a lot of Africans using YouTube to tell the African story. There's this lady who would say, she would ask questions like, she would say things like, maybe somebody would ask the questions, I thought you only had trees in Africa. And she would answer the question sarcastically with YouTube. You know, those are beautiful things. You can imagine putting that kind of lady into the development of artificial intelligence, how beautiful she would tell the African story. So representation matters, right? Not just the representation, we have to ensure that human capital matters. It is one thing for us to know that representation matters. It's another thing for us to ensure that there's human capital to fix the problem of representation. So I can know that, okay, we need representation. But what if I don't find the talents? I know that recently a founder was ranting on, I think it was Twitter, I think it was LinkedIn, about how she couldn't find the talent for something. I mean, this is not to support or to disagree, but just to say that whether or not her position is true, we must ensure that whichever field we find ourselves, if a gap needs to be filled, we are capable hands. So representation matters. There has to be more representation. Ensure that when the time comes, you are the skill that can actually fill in that gap for, yes, Charity AKZ. Thank you so much. You know, so imagine you put a Charity AKZ on an AI development project, and she needs to ensure that it's not just westernized, it's an African perspective. I will recommend that anyway because I know she'll do a fantastic job. So representation matters. She's doing that in her own way with YouTube. But with AI, you can do so many other things, right? So how you get to do that. So ensure also that you are building, don't just have a LinkedIn handle that talks about the very beautiful things that you're able to do. Ensure that you can really do it. And some people really need to go back, and I know you want to get into structured organization, you want to get into big organizations, that's fantastic. But if you're in a startup today, one thing I know about startups is you will grow because your hands are tested with so many things because it's a small organization. So leverage on that knowledge, do the hard things, right? And know that the day that we'll need somebody to fill in, maybe DeepSeek is looking for an African talent to help them to do something, that they can get on an interview with you and say, wow, we found somebody we want. You know, there's a way you can talk to somebody and say, let's not talk to others, we found the person we're looking for, be that person, right? Another thing that I would say for the Western narrative is, and I've said it again, is because remember that every information that you don't be an information consumer, be a producer. Every time you go on social media and you read, you scroll, the scrollers group, you read and scroll, you don't give your perspective on issues. The person who is saying rubbish in quotes is feeding the artificial intelligence system. The machine is learning. Sadly, is learning the negative things. So tell the African story. No matter how little that African story, no matter how little you're telling it, tell there are places in Nigeria that nobody knows about. There are beautiful places in Africa nobody knows about. Make up your mind that as you travel the world, you will tell the African story. So that are some of the ways that even if I'm not necessarily in AI development at the moment, I can feed the machines with the right information and with the right things. So that's some of the ways we can really start to look at it. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. That's really profound, really insightful. Thank you so much, Onye. Thank you so much. I think that we are ready to change the world. Don't you agree, everybody? I think we really are ready to change the world. Thank you so much, Onye. I like what you said. Be that person. If somebody's looking for just that one person, yeah, no, because is looking for just that one person that's can do this and can do that. Be that person. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Onye, for sharing. You dropped so many gems, so many gems. I am so glad that besides me being the host, I'm so glad that I got to listen and draw from your wealth of experience. Thank you so much, everyone. Everyone, can we please say thank you, Onye? Celebrate her with your emojis, the emoji reactions in the chat box. If you want to unmute your mic to say thank you, just say thank you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. Okay. Yes, we are doing a great job. We are doing a great job. Yeah, so do we have any questions? Is there anyone with a question here before Onye goes? Any questions for Onye? Are there any questions? Okay. I'm not seeing any. All right then, since there are no questions, we've come to the end of our very first town hall here at the Africa Women in AI Community Hub. Yay! Milestone achieved! And you were a part of it. Every single one of you were. You were a part of it. You shared the flyers. You came. You listened. You took down notes. You are here. Thank you so much. For myself and the rest of the team, we have Grace here. Grace is our community manager. Grace, please say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This means so much to us.
Thank you, Grace. And then Loretta is here as well. Loretta is in charge of digital marketing. So if you've been seeing ads all over your face, it's Loretta. It's Loretta. We have to thank Loretta. Could you say hello as well?
Hi, everybody. Hello. Thank you for making this a really big success. And we hope you guys become even more active and we actually go on and take all this knowledge and actually start implementing. We're here for you. AIBI is here for you. And we grow
Yes.
together. So thank you for being
Yes,
here.
yes, yes, yes. We are here for you. AIBIA is here for you. The African Women in AI Hub is here for you as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for those who stayed with us from beginning till now. For those who came when we're along the way, thank you so much. We really are grateful. We could not have achieved this success today without you. Um I'll just say this, right? Because I'd said it before. Whether you're new to AI, whether you're building your third model, you belong here and you are welcome here. Together, we are going to create a future where African women don't just fit into systems, we design new ones. And we have to do it boldly and we have to do it loudly. And this hub is one of the many initiatives that we are carrying out to create that world that we so desire, that world that we speak about with enthusiasm in our voices and sparks in our eyes. So thank you for being a part of us. Thank you for doing this with us. If you've not joined the community yet, um, in the chat box, the pinned message is there with our Discord link, our WhatsApp link, and our Discord link, WhatsApp link, and our Telegram link. Yes, those three. Those are the communities we are active. Those are the platforms our communities are actively participating in. Their group chats there. And every month, we're going to be having two events, a town hall and a mini Ask Me Anything session. Some months would have the proposal writing sessions, like I said in the beginning, where we're going to be training us on how to write proposals, guiding us to where we could get funding for all of our ideas. All ideas are welcome here. Provided it can solve the need of one or two, please bring it to us. We're going to just, hold your hand through the entire process and, help you achieve fruition for your ideas. Um, if you'd also like to be a part of AIBIA as well, we're going to be sharing the links for that. It's the parent organization. You could join that. It's not gender based. The organization is not gender based. We have monthly virtual conferences, and we're planning physical conferences to host between Q3 and Q4. So if you live in Kenya and you'd be willing to be a physical on-site volunteer for us, please do send any of us a message or just put it in the group. Hi guys, I live in Kenya and I would like to help because our next physical event is in Kenya, so let's do that as well. But for the community hub, I expect another session sometime this month towards the end. It's going to be a question session, so you bring all your questions and then an expert or two will just guide you through the answers, or just provide you with the answers rather. Yes, we are up to something here. We are up to something life changing. We are up to something world changing. um AI is a tool that has come to stay, and it is up to us to learn how to use this thing that is in our hands to potentially affect, impact, transform our respective fields. So yeah, thank you everyone for doing this with us. I am your host. I was so glad to be your host today. I might not host next time, but I was so glad to host today. This beautiful session. Brilliant conversations. I did promise people on social media. Brilliant conversations, brilliant women. And again, it doesn't matter what you've heard, right? It's what really matters is that you've implemented that which you've heard. So yeah, thank you so much everyone. Again, I've said so many thank yous, but thank you again. Really, I am grateful. We are all grateful. Thank you and have a lovely, lovely rest of day and a lovely weekend. See you at the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.